Good morning. Welcome to PodTails. In England and Wales, males of black African ethnic backgrounds had the highest rate of death involving COVID-19, 2.7 times higher than males of white ethnic backgrounds. Females of black ethnic Caribbean backgrounds had the highest rate 2 times higher than females of white ethnic backgrounds. These are official national statistics, 2021. Nims Obunge, who's running to be the first black mayor of London, is going to discuss COVID-19 with us today. Nims, what are you going to do? What are we going to do about COVID-19? It's completely changed London, hasn't it?
COVID has traumatized our world. It's changed the landscape of many nations. Economies have been impacted by it. But greater than that, lives have been lost. Families have been affected. And I recall the fact that the chairman of my charity, unfortunately passed on with COVID just a few weeks ago.
Which charity?
The Peace Alliance.
Yes.
So Terry Mansfield, he passed on. And a few weeks ago, I had a friend pass on the Monday and another friend pass on the Thursday with COVID. And just had to do his funeral, one of their funerals. And I've had church members in my organization where I happen to be also a minister who've had COVID. So it is a very challenging time. Mm-hmm. But I think looking beyond the trauma of what COVID is doing into the lives of many Londoners, we've got to look at how we can move forward and what moving forward looks like. Mm-hmm. I'm grateful that we now have a vaccine that seems to be working for many of us across the United Kingdom. But I know that there's a great resistance by folks in the black and minority ethnic communities about it.
I think it's more than resistance. I think it's fear. I think it's actual fear. Like I spoke to you about it because I was asked to be an ambassador for the BAME community and, to have the vaccine and encourage people to have it. And I felt honored to be asked, but I also haven't been able to accept yet because I don't know if it's the right thing to do or not because there's so much fear. People think it's a tool or a weapon for mass genocide, for the older community, for our elders and for the black community. I know that seems really far-fetched, but when we are able to see all the news and all the, I know a lot of it is fake news, but this is the power of social media. We're getting all this information and some of it's extremely convincing, particularly when the statistics show more black people are dying, male and female, than any other ethnic group. But there were a lot of people who believed that black people couldn't get it. So everyone was still out there. And then, we're the most likely to get it. So again, was that a trick to make people stay out there and get it? The most vulnerable people be out there catching it. Mm-hmm. So, my mother's in the vulnerable category and people in her age group have already been vaccinated and they're moving to the next level now. And I haven't been able to persuade my mother to have it, but I also haven't done a big job of trying because I'm not sure if it's the right thing to do. And I feel terrible saying it, but it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't.
I hear that. Sinitta, what's important is that we get the facts. We get to ask the questions. We've got to ask the questions. Yeah. Unfortunately, I've said this in the Financial Times, I've said it on Sky News, and I've said it in numerous media houses and publications. I feel that what's relevant to this whole debate is the mistrust that arises from the failing historically of unethical medical practices that have impacted our community, the notion that, and the truth about how black and minority ethnic folks have been treated even when it comes to mental health. And the statistics also speaks about the impact NHS have had on black women giving birth and how We've had
That women are still dying in childbirth
absolutely,
for normal procedures.
absolutely. So there's a lot of mistrust.
Yeah.
But then there has to be a campaign that oozes from both a national, regional, and local experience of people explaining what the vaccine's about. And we need to have a website from the government that clearly identifies and addresses these apprehensions and these fears. And I think the government is seeking, I was speaking to some folks in number 10, seeking to ensure that they do a lot more to communicate the issues that COVID has had.
So again, you get access, you're able to actually communicate with government
Absolutely.
about the BAME community and the information we get.
It's very relevant that we do so. I run a project in North London, in Haringey, and many of we have people who attend our services from 16 to 17 boroughs, and they're from the Black and Asian minority ethnic communities, and further afield from Eastern Europe. And it is so important that our service users get an understanding of what the impact COVID is having and the opportunity to potentially get vaccinated and be free of this deadly disease. So we've got...
people should, you're prepared to go on record and say people should get vaccinated.
I've actually said I'm waiting for my turn, and I will. We're looking at using my premises, the Tottenham Town Hall, as a premise to offer those who want to have the vaccine the opportunity to have it. But again, I am actively being involved in series of conversations, debates to build the reassurance. The reason we've got to do this, Sinitta, is even as I'm running for the mayor of London, I want to save the lives of Londoners. This is one of our greatest killers right now. And we've got to think about it in that way. We've got to listen to those conversations, listen to those concerns, and make sure we have a dialogue that's robust enough to give Londoners the confidence to engage with this issue. If not, we would have failed them.
And they reached out to you as someone they believed had a positive influence on the community that would be able to, someone that we would trust and listen to. And
hopefully, yes, I've spoken to different government officials, and I've spoken to folks in the NHS, I've spoken to the media, and I believe that running for mayor, whilst a separate issue from trying to ensure that our communities get effectively protected from COVID, somewhat interrelated.
Oh yeah, well, London's the capital city. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I want to see that we are kept safe. And for me, this is a plea to Londoners. Please consider having a discussion about the vaccine. Don't just discard the opportunity. Discuss it with your GP, discuss it with some health professionals, discuss it if you're a person of faith, discuss it with your faith leader, but also make sure you get the facts as they stand. Don't just go on social media and pick up on the hype around it and the fears around it. Let's look for what can keep all of us safe. By actually potentially taking the vaccine, you're protecting yourself, but you're also protecting your loved ones and your community.
On a positive side, what is the future for London after COVID? Because there were some good things, like I think some businesses have been able to reinvent themselves. I know a lot have suffered, but there's been a lot of good things and fun things as well, like seeing the West End doing all the outdoor seating and everything. It felt very continental, European, and it was fun to be outdoors. And especially after Brexit, I thought it created the type of London that I could imagine people really wanting to come and visit and spend time in.
What I want to see post-COVID and post this immediate era, post-lockdown, is a London that comes together, moves together, and we start beginning to think about how we can move forward as a city and a nation. Our theme for and our drive within our campaign, our Hope 21 campaign, is to move London forward together. That's what we want to see. And we believe that we can do that as a city. I've seen London at its best, like I alluded to in previous conversations, around the 2012 Olympics when we come together as a city, as a nation, to build for the future. I know there's been a lot of pain. I know there's been a lot of death. I know there's been a lot of people who've lost their jobs and furloughed from their jobs. But maybe there's a moment in time. Distress can become a great opportunity for taking us to a new position in the global context of where London stands. I really think there's something significant we can do as Londoners. Because
this is the London that you would be inheriting, the post-lockdown, hopefully post-COVID London.
And that's an exciting opportunity. It's a time to bring hope to a city. It's a time not to fight internal political games, but it's a time to make people believe that there's a future for our city and we can all believe in that future together.
And it's called Hope 21.
Our Hope 21 campaign is about moving London forward together. And that's what this is, moving forward together, and we can do that. What we're not looking for is working in silos. I believe that the strength of London right now is going to be built on our corporate entity as Londoners doing things together.
So can we just talk about the safety of London and what you have personally done? Because, you go out in the streets and you talk to the gang members, you're actively involved with the people, focusing on crime and violence in London.
Since we had the cancellation of the elections in May 2020, we'd already started a food program in our community called the Food Hub. We have a food bank and a food hub. And with the food hub, we were already serving about 400 people, if that, or a bit more.
So you started the food hub?
Yes, we started a food hub because I watched the program. I listened to a program on the radio, and it talked about kids who were going to school without food. So what we did in our community was we wrote a letter to schools and said, look, if you have any child that is not getting access to food, as a church, we would take responsibility to feeding that child. I didn't have the resources, but I just made that commitment because I felt that I never went to school having to be hungry. And I just felt it was inappropriate for children to struggle like that. So that was the beginning of the challenge. And somebody invited me to come and collect food from the Felix Project. And I went to the Felix Project and was able to get some food initially. From there, it cascaded. We started being able to give food every other week. By the time COVID hit, our numbers went from 300 to 1,000, from 1,000 to 2,000, from 2,000 to now nearly 3,000. ITV, Sky News came over to see how the numbers just kept increasing. And I was just so grateful. We're able to give food consistently to people in our community. And some of them come with their children.
With domestic violence, if a partner's had to flee the home.
Absolutely. One of the things we don't do, we don't question your journey. We don't question your circumstances. All we care about is making sure that we care for you, the person. And then with the food bank, working Freedom's Ark, our church, working in partnership with the Trussell Trust, which is separate from what the Peace Alliance and Freedom's Ark have done as a church and charity. What we do is we send food to people's homes every Monday and Thursday. So we feed in some weeks up to 100 people.
Well, these are people who aren't able to come.
Who aren't able to come, and who, we've decided because of COVID, it's safer for them to, for us to deliver to their homes. I wanted to speak about the spirit of Londoners. In this time during COVID, I have seen such a giving spirit. We have pubs that have brought food to us. We have organizations and individuals, people who have young people who have washed cars and raised funds to go and buy food to bring to us in order for us to serve the community. That's what I love about London. Great giving spirit. We're resilient. And I want to build on that resilience. I want to build upon the opportunities we have. But I also want to deal with the fact that we shouldn't have to have such queues outside premises for food. And so somehow or the other, we've got to address the poverty that's impacting our city.
So, join us again for more conversations with Nims Obunge, who's running to be the next Mayor of London and our first Black Mayor of London.